My wife took a secret vacation with her ex, while I watched our sick son, so I filed for full custody and never looked back. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and I used to think I'd built the perfect little family. Claire and I had been married for 7 years, and if you asked anyone who knew us, they'd probably say we were the couple everyone wanted to be. She had that kind of beauty that drew attention wherever she went. Graceful, confident, magnetic. And I was proud of her. We had a cozy 2-story house on a quiet street, a small backyard where our 4-year-old son, Ethan, liked to chase butterflies, and a life that looked stable enough to make anyone jealous. But what people didn't see was how much of that image was held together by me, by late nights balancing bills, cooking meals, cleaning up toys, and trying to keep everything running while Claire drifted further into her own world. She used to be the kind of woman who'd curl up beside me and ask about my day. Lately, she spent more time on her phone, smiling at notifications she never explained. "Just a friend from work," she'd say casually, scrolling through texts while I rocked Ethan through another coughing fit. I told myself not to overthink it. After all, everyone needs their space, right? Still, it stung how her self-care weekends started happening more often. Spa days, brunches, short getaways with friends. She always had a reason. I didn't mind at first. I wanted her to be happy. But every time she left, Ethan would ask, "When's Mommy coming home?" And I'd have to distract him with stories until his medicine kicked in. Sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet except for Ethan's shallow breathing, I'd lie awake wondering if love was supposed to feel this one-sided. I'd built everything around my family, but lately, it felt like I was the only one still trying to hold it together. And deep down, I had no idea just how close we were to falling apart. Ethan's asthma had always been manageable, until that winter. The cold air made every breath harder for him, and suddenly, my nights were filled with the sound of coughing fits that sent waves of panic through me. I slept sitting up beside his bed, holding the nebulizer mask over his tiny face while watching the rise and fall of his chest. Some nights he'd whisper, "Daddy, am I going to be okay?" And I'd force a smile, even when fear clawed at my throat. Claire, meanwhile, seemed more and more distant. She'd help for a few minutes, then sigh and say things like, "You're so much better at this than I," before retreating to the bedroom to get some rest. Told myself she just couldn't handle the stress. But that excuse started to sound hollow the 10th time she scrolled through her phone while I was cleaning, up vomit from another coughing episode. One night, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, glass of wine in hand, laughing at something on her phone. I stood there, exhausted, still wearing the same hoodie I'd slept in for 2 days straight. "Claire, can you please check on Ethan while I grab a shower?" I asked softly. She didn't even look up. "I just sat down, Mark. Can it wait a few minutes?" That was the first time I felt something break. Not anger, not even sadness, just emptiness. I went back to Ethan's room, closed the door, and sat beside his bed in silence. I could hear Claire laughing faintly through the walls. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt completely alone. In that quiet moment, I realized something I'd been avoiding for months. Whatever was pulling her attention away from us wasn't stress or burnout. It was something or someone else. I just didn't know who yet. A few weeks later, Claire walked into the kitchen one morning with a calm, almost rehearsed smile. She said she'd been burned out and needed to clear her mind, maybe take a short trip with her girlfriends. "It's just a wellness retreat," she told me, sliding her coffee mug across the counter like she was offering peace. No phones, no drama, just some time to recharge. I hesitated. Ethan's condition had been unpredictable lately, and the idea of her leaving made me uneasy. But Claire looked tired, detached, and I thought maybe, just maybe, this would help her come back more present, more grounded. So I nodded. "You deserve a break," I said. She kissed my cheek lightly, but it felt mechanical, like muscle memory instead of affection. That Friday, I drove her to the airport. She wore her favorite sundress, the one I'd always loved, but something about her felt distant. Her suitcase was lighter than usual, and she carried only one small bag. "You'll text me when you land?" I asked as she hugged me goodbye. "Of course," she said, her voice smooth but her eyes somewhere else. The drive home felt longer than usual. Ethan kept asking, "Where's Mommy going?" And I told him she'd be back in a few days. But that night, when I checked my phone, I noticed her last seen time on our chat had been hours earlier, even though her flight should have landed by then. I brushed it off. Bad signal, maybe. Still, unease gnawed at me. I went through the motions, feeding Ethan, reading him bedtime stories, cleaning up the living room, but something about that goodbye clung to me like a shadow. Lying awake in bed, I stared at the empty spot beside me. The sheets were cold, the silence heavier than usual. I told myself it was just a weekend, just 3 days. I had no idea that while I was holding our son through another coughing fit, Claire was already living a different life, one she hadn't bothered to tell me about. 2 days into her wellness retreat, Ethan was finally having a good morning. His breathing was steady, his laugh filling the living room as he built towers out of toy blocks. I remember feeling a small wave of peace, something I hadn't felt in weeks. I decided to capture the moment and upload a few pictures to my private family album. That's when I noticed a notification on social media. A friend had tagged Claire in a post. I clicked it without thinking. What opened on my screen made my stomach twist. There she was, standing barefoot on a white sand beach, the ocean behind her glowing orange from the sunset. But she wasn't alone. Daniel, her ex, the same man she'd sworn she hadn't spoken to in years. His arm was wrapped around her waist, both of them smiling like they'd just fallen in love all over again. For a few seconds, I froze. My brain tried to rationalize it. Old photo? Coincidence. But the timestamp said it all. Posted that morning. My hands trembled as I scrolled. More pictures. Claire in a floral dress I'd bought for our anniversary. Claire holding a cocktail, Daniel's hand resting on her leg. Caption after caption from her friends. "You two look amazing. So happy for you both." I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Ethan tugged at my sleeve, asking, "Daddy, what's wrong?" I forced a smile, closed the laptop, and said, "Nothing, buddy. Just work stuff." That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I reopened those pictures. I saved every single one. Screenshots, timestamps, captions, evidence. My hands shook with rage and disbelief as I scrolled again and again, hoping it was all some misunderstanding, but there was no misunderstanding. My wife hadn't gone to a wellness retreat. She'd gone on a tropical getaway with the man she used to love. And as I sat there in the dim light of our living room, the truth hit me like a tidal wave. The life I thought I knew was already gone, and when she came home, I decided I wouldn't let her know that I knew. Not yet. Claire returned on a Tuesday evening, suitcase in hand, smile perfectly in place, as if she hadn't just spent a weekend betraying me. Ethan ran to her, wrapping his little arms around her legs, squealing, "Mommy!" She crouched down, hugging him tightly, kissing his forehead like she'd missed him every second she was gone. Watching her act so naturally made my stomach churn. I forced a smile, pretending everything was normal, even as my pulse hammered in my ears. At dinner, I asked casual questions, like someone trying to stay interested in small talk. "So, how was the retreat?" I asked, twirling my fork. Claire didn't flinch. "It was amazing," she said easily, her tone practiced. "Lots of yoga, journaling, and detox smoothies. I feel lighter." She took a sip of her wine and looked at me with those same calm eyes she used when she lied about little things, like where she spent her afternoon, or who she was texting. "Must have been relaxing," I replied, pretending to focus on my plate. In my pocket, my phone held every photo I'd saved, every tag, every timestamp. Proof. My fingers itched to slam it on the table and demand answers, but Ethan was sitting right between us, humming softly as he played with his fork. I couldn't do it, not in front of him. Later that night, as she unpacked, I noticed something. The floral dress she'd worn in those beach photos, washed and folded neatly in her suitcase. I stared at it like it was radioactive. She caught my gaze and smiled faintly. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She kissed my cheek before heading to the shower, humming softly. I stood there, motionless, the sound of running water mixing with the pounding in my chest. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream. But before I could, Ethan's soft cough echoed down the hall. Sharp, strained, desperate. His breathing was getting worse again, and in that moment, everything else had to wait. My son was struggling to breathe, and my wife's betrayal would have to stand in the shadows. For now, that night turned into a blur of panic. Ethan's coughing wouldn't stop. His little body shook with every breath, and by the time I checked his oxygen levels, they were dangerously low. I grabbed his inhaler, then the nebulizer, but nothing helped. His lips were turning pale. "Hang on, buddy," I whispered, pulling on my jacket and scooping him into my arms. "Daddy's got you." I called out for Claire as I rushed toward the door. No answer. Her car was still in the driveway, but the house was quiet. The shower wasn't running anymore. "Claire!" I shouted again, voice cracking. Nothing. I didn't have time to look. I buckled Ethan into the back seat and sped to the ER, running red lights, praying under my breath the whole way. Hours passed at the hospital. Machines beeped, nurses hurried, and I sat there clutching Ethan's hand while doctors worked to stabilize him. It wasn't until dawn that his breathing finally eased. The doctor came over, exhausted but calm. "He's stable now," he said. "You got him here just in time." Only then did Claire finally walk in. Makeup perfect, hair done, wearing a light blue dress that looked far too elegant for someone who was supposedly home all night. "Oh my God," she gasped, pressing her hands to her mouth. "What happened?" I stared at her, my jaw tightening. "Where were you?" "My phone died," she said quickly, avoiding eye contact. "I fell asleep and—" The doctor interrupted, flipping through a chart. "You must be Claire, right? Glad you made it. The nurse said you arrived late this morning." Her eyes flashed with panic. "What do you mean this morning?" I asked quietly. But I already knew. She hadn't been home. Something inside me went cold. The wellness retreat had been a lie. Her phone dying was a lie. Now, when our son nearly stopped breathing, she hadn't even been there. And for the first time in 7 years, I stopped trying to make excuses for her. I stopped pretending this was still a marriage. After that night, something inside me shifted. I stopped asking questions I already knew the answers to. Claire went through her days as if nothing had happened, posting coffee photos, chatting with friends, laughing at shows beside me like she wasn't living a double life. But now I was watching her carefully. Every move, every call, every lie dressed up as casual conversation. One afternoon, when she left her laptop open on the counter, I saw her email notifications flash. A message preview caught my eye, "Miss you already," from someone named Daniel. My hands shook as I clicked it open. The message wasn't just flirtation, it was proof. He mentioned their Hawaii getaway, how he could still taste the salt water on her skin. My stomach turned. I took screenshots of everything, emails, timestamps, even the hotel booking confirmations attached below. That night, I confronted my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back looked hollow, his eyes red from sleepless nights. I wasn't angry anymore, just numb. I thought about Ethan, how innocent he was, how he still called her mommy with so much love. How could I let him grow up thinking this was normal? I confided in my sister, Anna, over the phone. My voice broke halfway through. "I don't even recognize her anymore," I said. "It's like she's living in another world." "Mark," she said softly, "you need to protect yourself and Ethan. This isn't just about betrayal, it's about safety. Start documenting everything," so I did. Every night after Ethan fell asleep, I'd sit at my desk and build a quiet case. Screenshots, receipts, messages, phone records. It was like constructing a grave for the version of my life I thought I had. And through it all, Claire kept smiling, kept pretending, completely unaware that I was done playing the fool. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized this wasn't just infidelity. It was a pattern, a life built on lies, and I was about to find out just how deep it went. It happened on a Thursday night, a moment I'll never forget because it broke something inside me for good. I was in the kitchen reheating soup for Ethan when I heard Claire in the living room, talking softly on the phone. At first I ignored it, but then her tone changed. Warm, intimate, familiar. I froze. "Daniel, please. Stop asking me that," she whispered. My pulse spiked. "I just need more time. Mark's starting to act suspicious." She laughed quietly. "He's so busy with Ethan, he barely notices when I'm gone." I stood there, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. Every word was a knife. He barely notices when I'm gone. That was the moment I stopped being shocked and started feeling disgust. I wasn't just betrayed, I was used. She'd turned our home into a lie, our child into background noise. Ethan wandered into the kitchen holding his inhaler, his big brown eyes half drowsy. "Daddy, is Mommy going away again?" he asked innocently. I knelt down, forcing a smile even as tears burned behind my eyes. "Nobody," I said. "Not this time." After I tucked him into bed, I sat alone in the dark, surrounded by the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of Claire's laughter drifting down the hall. My chest felt hollow. For years, I'd believed love meant patience, forgiveness, endurance. But all it had gotten me was an empty marriage and a son who deserved better. I poured a glass of water and stared at the stack of evidence I'd collected. Photos, receipts, messages, all spread across the table like puzzle pieces spelling out the truth. The man I used to be, the one who believed in giving her the benefit of the doubt, was gone. That night, I made a silent promise to myself and to Ethan. I would never let her lies poison his world again. But to do that, I had to play my part a little longer, until the timing was perfect. From that night on, everything I did had purpose. I spoke less, smiled more, and played the role of the oblivious husband to perfection. Claire thought she'd gotten away with everything. She'd underestimate me right until the end. Every morning, I packed Ethan's lunch, kissed her cheek, and left for work like nothing had changed. But behind that calm exterior, I was quietly building an escape. I met with a family lawyer my sister recommended. Sitting across the mahogany desk, I handed him a flash drive full of screenshots, emails, and proof of neglect. He scrolled in silence before looking up. "You have a strong case," he said, "especially with your son's condition. You'll need to stay patient, though. Don't let her know you're preparing this." Patience. I had plenty. I spent the next few weeks documenting everything. Every time she left Ethan sick at home to go out with friends. Every time I called and she ignored it. Every medical appointment she skipped. I even recorded the night she forgot to pick up Ethan's prescription because she was too tired, though I later saw a charge from a downtown bar on her card. At home, I treated her like normal. I helped with dinner, complimented her hair, even listened to her complain about her overwhelming life. She'd sit across from me, sipping wine, completely unaware that I was building the legal equivalent of a wrecking ball aimed right at her world. One night, she asked, "You've been so quiet lately. Everything okay?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah," I said, "just tired." She laughed softly, brushing my arm. "You always worry too much." She was right, but not in the way she thought. I wasn't worried anymore. I was focused. And when I finally had every document, every piece of evidence, every witness lined up, I knew exactly what my next step would be, because the woman sitting across from me wasn't my wife anymore. She was the opponent I was about to defeat in court. The day of the custody hearing felt surreal, like walking into the final act of a nightmare I'd already lived 100 times in my head. The courthouse smelled faintly of coffee and nerves. My hands shook as I buttoned Ethan's little blue shirt that morning, trying to stay calm for him even though my stomach was twisted in knots. Claire arrived late, wearing a cream blazer and sunglasses indoors, like she was walking into a fashion show instead of a custody battle. When she saw me sitting with my lawyer, she smiled faintly, as if she still believed she could charm her way through this. "You didn't have to make this so ugly," she whispered before taking her seat. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The hearing began. Her lawyer painted her as a devoted mother who needed time for herself, and accused me of being emotionally distant. I clenched my jaw, letting him talk. When my lawyer stood up, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He opened a folder and began presenting the evidence one piece at a time. Hotel receipts. Photos of her and Daniel in Hawaii. Time stamped during her wellness retreat. text messages proving she'd left Ethan sick and alone while she was out drinking. Then came the hospital records, the night Ethan nearly stopped breathing and she never showed up. The judge's expression changed slowly from neutral to grim. Claire's confidence drained with every exhibit. "Do you deny this evidence, Mrs. Wilson?" the judge asked. Claire's voice cracked. I just needed to feel loved again. It wasn't supposed to—" "Your son could have died," my lawyer interrupted coldly. Silence filled the room. Even Claire couldn't hold the judge's gaze. When the final words were spoken, "Full custody awarded to the father," I didn't feel triumph, just release. I looked at her one last time, her face pale, mascara smudged, eyes darting for an exit that didn't exist. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Because the truth had finally spoken louder than her lies. The weeks after the hearing felt strangely quiet, like my life had been stripped of noise. No more shouting, no more tension, no more pretending. Just me and Ethan, and the silence of a home finally free of deceit. The first few nights were hard. He'd wake up crying, asking, "Is Mommy mad at me?" Each time I'd hold him close and whisper, "No, buddy. Mommy just needs to figure some things out." It broke me a little every time I said it, but I refused to let her chaos become his burden. Claire tried calling at first, voicemails full of tears and half-hearted apologies. "I messed up, Mark. I can fix this." Then, when that didn't work, the messages turned bitter. "You poisoned him against me. You always wanted control." I didn't answer any of them. My lawyer had made it clear. Limited contact only, everything through email, all monitored. And even through the guilt and exhaustion, there was relief in that boundary. Daniel didn't last long. 2 weeks after the ruling, she moved out of his apartment. Word spread fast through mutual friends. He'd dumped her once the custody decision came out. Apparently, being with a mother who lost her kid wasn't good for his image. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a hollow kind of justice. The life she'd chosen over us was gone. Meanwhile, Ethan started to heal, slowly. His breathing got better, his laughter louder. We fell into our own rhythm. Breakfast pancakes, weekend cartoons, evening walks where he'd hold my hand and tell me about school. There was peace in the small things. One night, months later, Claire called again. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was soft, desperate. "Can we just start over?" I looked at Ethan's toys scattered across the floor and said, quietly, "You already had your vacation. Claire." Then I ended the call, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. But deep down, I knew there was still one final step before I could truly move on. You said, 2 years later, our lives look nothing like the ruins she left behind. Ethan's 7 now, healthy, curious, and full of life. The inhalers that once cluttered the nightstand are tucked away, used only for rare flare-ups. Every morning he runs to the bus stop with that same backpack I once packed with medication and worry, and every evening he comes home to laughter, warmth, and stability. Our house finally feels like a home again. Quiet, peaceful, alive. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about Claire, not with anger anymore, but with a strange sense of clarity. She tried reaching out again, sending long emails about missing Ethan, about finding herself. I read the first one, then deleted the rest. You can't rebuild trust on ashes. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean opening the door again. It means closing it without hate. I've rebuilt everything piece by piece. My career, my peace, my sense of self. There are still nights when I sit on the porch after Ethan's asleep, listening to the crickets and thinking about how close I came to losing everything. How love can blind you and how betrayal can wake you up. The man I was, the one who made excuses, who believed patience could fix someone who didn't want to be fixed, is gone. A few weeks ago, Ethan asked, "Dad, why don't we see Mommy anymore?" I took a breath and said, "Because sometimes loving someone means knowing when to walk away." He nodded quietly, then smiled and said, "I'm glad you stayed." That line hit harder than anything else ever could. Because he was right. I stayed. I fought. and I built a better life for him out of the wreckage she left behind. So when people ask if I'd ever take her back, I just shake my head and smile. I already did the hardest thing. I stopped looking back.